We're talking about Dracula and Frankenstein.
Yeah. Something that I was noticing while I was watching these movies is that the Dracula is the oldest film that a normal person would watch. Like you could imagine any old person.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
You could imagine any old person going, it's Halloween time. I'm going to watch Dracula. Mm-hmm. I'm a dad. I'm going to watch Dracula, you know? You can't imagine somebody, you'd have to be a little bit more of a cinephile to go, I'm going to watch All Quiet on the Western Front. You'd have to be a lot, or a lot more of a cinephile if you're going to watch anything silent,
Yeah. Right.
A random guy isn't going to watch anything silent. A random guy might watch Dracula.
Yeah.
So it is the beginning of cinema history as far as normal guys are concerned.
I want to find a normal guy who just randomly throws on Last Laugh. But I don't know if that person exists.
It's definitionally not a normal guy.
There you go. Simply by watching Last Laugh, he is no longer normal.
You're some kind of freak.
So the first of these two movies to be released, and I think the release order is similarly, it's probably more important in this case than with the last two. Dracula came out in I think February of 1931, which is a bonkers time to release this movie. The fact that you would not release this movie in like late September or October is crazy.
I mean, it is... That's true, but there is a tradition. Now. There's a tradition of now there's a tradition of horror movies coming out in February because they just dump them in.
Well, because there's nothing else playing, and so they can make a ton of money.
Yeah,
but it's like this and Frankenstein both, but like probably even more so for Dracula is like the Halloweeniest movie maybe ever made. It's like the Halloween vibes are, for at least large chunks of it, are so strong of like how many cobwebs and bats are in this thing.
Spooky castles,
Dracula, like the most famous iteration of Dracula. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, maybe this was before that was like a thing. Like, did people, like, Halloween was a holiday in America in 1931, but like how much of the iconography associated with it was established with these two movies?
It's exactly the kind of stuff I wonder about all the time.
I don't know. This movie, Dracula, directed by Todd Browning, who I think we had mentioned before. Well, we'd mentioned London After Midnight, which is a famous lost movie from, I think, 26 or 27 that Todd Browning directed with Lon Chaney, where Lon Chaney played a vampire. Mm-hmm. And so this is his return to the vampire genre. And he was originally going to make it with Lon Chaney again at playing Dracula. But Lon Chaney unfortunately died of, I think, lung cancer in 1930, like as they were developing it. He might have actually dropped out before that, but it was like Lon Chaney was not in good enough shape to make this movie from the get-go. So they had to find another person. And they went with Bela Lugosi, who had played Dracula on Broadway in the play, the 1920s play, which this movie is mostly based on. This movie is more based on the play than the book. Which is kind of my main issue with it, but...
Oh, interesting. I'm not super familiar with the book, and it's been a very long time since I've seen the Coppola movie. Glenn's pulling out the book right there.
I haven't read it, but I have it handy.
He likes to...
want to read it.
He's someone unlike me who has tolerance for old prose. But I was kind of shocked watching this because what I have seen, what I am much more familiar with, is Nosferatu. Mm-hmm. And it made me realize how much of a knockoff Nosferatu really is of Dracula.
Yeah. No, it is directly a Dracula movie, just with all the names changed. I would actually argue that I think Nosferatu is kind of a closer adaptation of Dracula than this movie is. I think this movie changes more stuff from the book than that does. Not counting names, of course. But like the entire idea of Dracula being like a suave, handsome gentleman who like seduces women with his like European charm is a theater thing. Like in the book, he's like old and gross, more like how Dracula usually is in like newer movies where they show him as like an old creep, or like Max Schreck is in Nosferatu, where he's like a creature more than he is a person.
Right. I was thinking about Nosferatu and how like comparing it to the suave Dracula of this movie, and Hutter, who is the Renfield character in Nosferatu.
Well, he's more of the Harker analog in Nosferatu, but also this movie swaps Renfield and Harker in for the first like chunk of it. So
I don't know who this is. The
guy who visits Dracula at his castle.
Okay, I didn't know that they changed that, but like in Nosferatu, Hutter is an absolute buffoon. He is as we called him, a himbo vampire hunter in that episode. Like
sort of a Keanu Reeves type, perhaps.
Sure. But like Nosferatu or Orlok is like such an obvious freak that like you need to be dumb to just continue
you show the
on.
castle and you see Count Orlok, you're just like, no, thank you, sir. That is a creature. That is not a person.
Where it's like this guy, like Renfield in this movie, is more of a normal guy who, and so if he were to see such a freak as Count Orlok, he would just turn around again, you know?
Right.
But yeah, he goes, oh, okay, this is a reasonable weird guy, right?
Yeah.
He's
from somewhere in Eastern Europe. I guess it's fine.
Yeah, everyone tells me stories about how he's
cape.
creepy.
Right.
He likes to keep 20-foot diameter cobwebs on his staircase.
So that's like a pretty big change, I guess, from like the book or the traditional Dracula stories. Usually we start with Jonathan Harker or Hutter in Nosferatu. He's going to visit Dracula's castle in Transylvania to close a real estate deal, so that Dracula can buy a castle or an abbey in London. And then Jonathan Harker gets stuck in the castle and he has to escape, yada, yada, yada. And then there's a different character who's Renfield, who at the start of every other Dracula story is like already insane and is locked up in the asylum. This is, I think, maybe the only example where they switch out in the opening scene. It's Renfield going to the castle to visit Dracula. And we actually see him pre-crazy.
I think the person who plays Renfield, was it
Dwight Frye?
Dwight Frye. He is so good in this.
He is like Bela Lugosi is like, he's very good in this and is like so iconic that it's like blasphemic to say anything bad about it. But Dwight Frye was the performance I was most impressed with, I guess, because I had no frame of reference for it. I was just like, he's very good in this.
He starts as a very straight-laced normal guy, and then the second that he is
even a sort of like a slightly sort of like fancy lad. He's sort of he's like his suit is like really nice, and he's got his hat, and he's just, you get the sense he's like a very much like a city guy who's like totally out of his depth in a spooky castle,
right?
Which is kind of where some of the comedy comes from. But then he turns into the Renfield that we're used to seeing in Dracula stories, which is just this like animalistic crazy person who eats bugs and is just trying to is calling Dracula master and is, you know, his thrall, his familiar, as it were, if we're getting into what we do in the shadows terminology. But I kind of like that change. I think it's like, on one hand, I think it's better to have our lead character be the one to like introduce us to Dracula's castle and to have all that stuff happen. So I think it kind of hurts the movie in that way. But I like showing Renfield pre-crazy, because I feel like that almost never happens in Dracula movies or stories or whatever. Like it's usually, as soon as we meet him, he's eating bugs and he's talking about the master and all that fun stuff. But like, I like how you can see he's like, oh, he's like a normal dude. And then cut to the next scene and he is just a lunatic.
Right. He gets bitten specifically. And that,
or it's kind
gets
of
him
implied that he's bitten and he's sort of like almost like a half vampire in this. Because that also isn't, sometimes it's more like hypnotism of like what his deal is, you know? Like what Renfield's deal is pretty vague. I think.
And speaking of hypnotism, though, there's a lot of fun stuff done in this movie with Dracula's hypnotic powers, where people, in particular Renfield, are like, there are just scenes where Bela Lugosi is staring at him and like kind of telepathically having a conversation that you're hearing half of. And I think it's pretty well done in this movie. You just get to see like Bela Lugosi mug toward the camera in a kind of threatening way.
He does his eyes. He's got very piercing eyes. I feel like he was cast maybe as Dracula in stage or on film, whatever, purely on his eyes alone. But it's like, I don't know, his performance in this is almost so iconic that it becomes silly.
Yeah.
Like his voice, his mannerisms is like the entire idea, not just of like Dracula's voice, but like vampire voice comes from him specifically.
We had the original Dracula, the original Frankenstein, and the original gangster in this.
Yeah, it's crazy.
the original gangster, the OG.
Yeah. No, but it's true. And so there's like, you know, when he's like, I never drink wine. It's like, one, that's a very silly line to begin with. But it's like, even his cadence, his like, the speed in which he speaks is like, it's Dracula voice. It's like, yeah, it's Dracula.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you're getting at something true when you are like, you're saying that this is a very Halloween-y movie, because this is not a scary film. Like, we've seen scary movies.
Like Nosferatu.
Yeah, but like, this is just like spooky Halloween fun, you know?
It is very spooky. It is almost never scary. There is a single shot in this movie that I do think is fairly scary, which is when the ship arrives in London. They don't call it the Demeter, they call it the something else. I think the Vesta. But so Dracula's ship gets to London, and the people find that all the crews have all been killed, and they open up the hold, and there's a shot of Renfield at the bottom of the stairs looking up, like revealed by the light of that hatch of the ship, and he's just smiling and laughing like under his breath, this like low like chuckle, which he does throughout the whole movie. But that shot is incredibly creepy. I think it's really the only time the movie actually kind of gets under my skin. The rest of the time it's like, yeah, it's Bela Lugosi wearing a cape walking around like staring at people, and I'm like, this isn't really scary.
I mean, you know, to make a comparison with Frankenstein, I think like there are very cool sets in this movie, but like I feel like there's a whole lot of nothing in it. Like,
yeah, you are correct.
Like visually, the scenes are not that rich. It's just they're shooting in some cool places and they have some cool matte paintings. And like there are a lot of scenes where just people are just staring at each other. And it's not boring, it's just a little plain, I guess.
I started to find it boring. This movie's very short. My big hot take on Dracula is that I don't think it holds up. I don't think it's a very good movie.
I think it's like a nice thing to put on, but it's like I don't.
But I don't think it's
good.
I don't think it's a good movie. The way that like most of the other movies that we've already talked about are like good movies, are like well made, well directed movies. I watched Dracula and I was kind of disappointed that I'm like, this isn't really good.
It's fun, but it could be a lot tighter.
I mean, for one, Nosferatu totally eats this movie's lunch. Both in terms of like adapting Dracula, the story, and also just for being like genuinely creepy and like creating an atmosphere and like all those things. I think this movie feels, even if I hadn't read that it was based more on the stage play, I would be like, this is based on the play, right? Because it's like, it feels so stage bound.
I suppose so.
In a way that it feels like this movie suffers from so many like early talkie problems. Even just like bad audio recording at times. So much of this movie takes place in like mansion living rooms.
Yeah. Yep.
Much like a stage play would. And so much happens off screen too. To the point where I got annoyed. Where I'm like, show us something cool. I don't want to be stuck in this dumb mansion living room the whole movie. So there's that whole cool opening, right, where Renfield goes to the village and meets Dracula in his castle, and there's cobwebs everywhere and bats and spiders and spooky stuff. And that part is pretty good. Probably the best part of the movie. And then we get the boat to London. Once we get to London, I feel like this movie really starts to suffer from the staginess of it all. One, because I think a lot of the other actors in this feel very like British stage actory, which isn't, I guess, is a weird complaint to make, but it's like they don't really feel like they're doing film acting.
Yeah, I mean, especially with all the kind of standing still and staring, you know.
Yeah, I think Bela Lugosi comes across well. He's not doing a lot. He's letting his like presence do most of the work, which is fine because he has a lot of presence to go around, so it works. I think Dwight Frye is really good, and I think the guy who plays Van Helsing is really good. I think those three actors feel like they're actually putting in performances.
My kind of skewed understanding of Frankenstein, I was like, okay, wait, so Van Helsing isn't Hugh Jackman, like action guy?
Yeah, he doesn't have like a big hat and a crossbow and a sword.
I was genuinely surprised. I thought that's what Van Helsing was.
Yeah, no, Van Helsing is in pretty much every other instance an old Scandinavian man, as he is in this.
But like Van Helsing is such a metal name, you know?
It is. It certainly is. Have you seen the Francis Ford Coppola Dracula?
Yes, but a very, very long time ago. I don't.
Did you watch it at my house?
I did, yes.
Okay. I remember not liking it that time that we watched it because that movie is just so bonkers. I feel like it was like I couldn't reconcile the like different tones and things like that. But it's one of my favorite movies now. I think that movie rules. Okay. And Anthony Hopkins, who plays Van Helsing in that, is great. That's my favorite Van Helsing. Yeah, I felt let down by this movie a bit by how much I didn't really feel like it holds up. It feels very, very stagey. There's so many places where I'm like, you could have shown a cool. There's a part right where like Dracula attacks someone and like runs off, and Jonathan Harker sees that and he's like looking out the window and he's like, oh look, a big wolf. Look at it run away. I'm like, oh, you could show us that, but you know, or anything cool right now. But no, we're just stuck in this living room for like, 70% of the movie.
That was another thing that I didn't know about was that Dracula can turn into a wolf.
Oh, he can turn into all kinds of stuff. Wolf, smoke, bat.
I thought he was just a bat guy.
Yeah, he's got different forms.
It's kind of funny. I don't know why, but like this movie really focuses a lot more on him being a wolf guy than a bat guy. It's just they only show the bat
stuff. Yeah. Well, it's also like he like can kind of control animals too. Like he can wolves kind of follow his bidding. It seems also.
Before we are done talking about this, we would be sort of remiss in not mentioning Spanish Dracula.
Of course, one of the more well-known things about this movie is the fact that there is two of them.
Yes.
Although we only watched the English language version.
Yeah, I definitely want to see the Spanish one though. But
yeah.
So, they built all these sets, and some of the sets are quite cool, I will say, especially the castle. They filmed an English version during the daytime, and then with an entirely different cast and crew, they used the same sets and then filmed a Spanish version at night. And there are kind of different aspects of it. It's a bit sexier, and like different characters have different. There are different people who are kind of have more pronounced performances in the movie, and yeah, I'm quite curious to see it, and it's just like such an interesting thing to watch two people take a simultaneous stab at the same movie.
Yeah, and also apparently the Spanish crew would watch the rushes that were shot during the day and be like, well, we can do better than that, right? Like they would see what the English language crew would do and then try to like one up them.
I mean, that bodes well for the Spanish version.
From some of the impression I get having not watched the entire Spanish version of it is that some things definitely are better. Like there's a lot more camera movement in the Spanish one, and there's some like performance things. Like there's a bit where Van Helsing shows Dracula a mirror, and he sees that he has no reflection, and it freaks him out. And so he like in the Bela Lugosi one, he like slaps it out of his hand. In the Spanish one, he like smashes it with a cane, and like pieces go flying everywhere. And that's the sort of thing where they're like, yeah, let's jazz it up a bit. Let's get it a bit more intense. I'd really like to watch the full Spanish one, but we didn't do that for this episode because we had a lot of other movies to watch. I read that Todd Browning didn't really like making talkies. Like he enjoyed doing silent movies more, and so maybe that's just a product of him sort of not really adapting to a sound movie that well. There's long stretches of this movie that have no music or sound to them at all. Mm-hmm. Like no dialogue, no sound effects. It's just silent. Truly silent. It happens enough that it started to annoy me. Like there's places where it's building atmosphere and it's good just to like have the sound cut out and just to have some real tension build in that silence. But then there's other times where I'm just like, did they not record any sound for this or like put footsteps over it?
It's a movie that suffers from not having a score. I think that if it had a Halloween-y score, then it would help the movie a lot. And there is on the Blu-ray there is a score that Philip Glass wrote for the movie, which I'd also be curious to watch that version.
Yeah, I listened to part of it and it seems cool. Like it sounds like Philip Glass score, but it's like appropriately spooky.
Spooky Glass.
Todd Browning was. We'll probably talk more about him and about this aspect of him later with his other famous movie Freaks. Yeah. But he was like a circus guy. He like came up in like vaudeville and the circus and like doing spooky shows in the circus. And another fun bit is that some of the sound effects of this movie were done by Jack Foley himself of Foley Artist.
Whoa!
Fame. Like the guy that that Foley Artistry is named after. Worked on
oh my god!
Which is also ironic that I think this movie needs way more Foley in it than it does.
Not enough Foley.
Yeah. So yeah, Dracula, very iconic, very famous, super influential. I don't really think it holds up that great, personally. But it people liked it when it came out. It did very well. This movie is so the earlier Universal monster movies that we had talked about, the like Phantom of the Opera and Hunchback, the Lon Chaney ones were produced by Carl Laemmle, who was the head of Universal. And by this point, his son, Carl Laemmle Jr., was working at Universal. And Carl Laemmle Sr. famously did not like horror movies. He was like, horror, not a fan. All this monster stuff, ugh. I'll make a Quasimodo picture, but like, it's more about the architecture and all that.
It's not like a whole Moto picture, it's just a quasi one. You know?
Right. Laemmle Jr. loved monsters and spooky stuff. He was all about that. So he was like, I want to make more monsters. And so he was like the main producer behind this movie and Frankenstein. Mm-hmm. This movie did really well. And so they were like, what's the next most spookiest thing we can do? Frankenstein.